is is it a market type thing that Rochdale see that Mayfield are doing it to say, actually, you guys are doing it well, get on with it, we'll get out your way. Yeah. There's no point again. Are they actually doing a positive thing in not competing with with other parts of the game that are doing that role?
Because the community in a better way can offer these 16-year-old kids open age rugby, which the Hornets can't.
No. And really, they can't even offer them.
There's no consistent structure there for them to do that.
It's not a reserve grade where they could learn. So if they're looking, especially when they're looking at people late into the sport from other sports, then there's not a place for them to learn. Whereas the community game does offer them, a structure where they can find an appropriate league to learn at, be it whatever level they're at, and then they can work up if they're good enough.
And I almost think the really well-run clubs or the really well-supported financially by one or two or a small group of big backers, I almost think that shows an ambition that will put you into that next group of being able to chase a full-time status. And it's clear that not everyone wants to be in that group, or that there's not enough people who want to make their local club,
and that's okay. It's okay not to want that. It's if you make a conscious decision that actually your best thing for you is to be the best part-time club, or if your aim is to win your derby match twice, 3 times, 4 times a year, then that's fine. We should embrace that and take the positive out of what that brings to the sport, because it provides another team for clubs to play. It provides an anchor, and they're probably more stable. If some stability up and down the pyramid is not a bad thing in any way. You see how many clubs have gone and got the begging bowl out and had to shake buckets this year, and only Salford started doing it today. Yeah.
And that's right at the top, as it were. Well, not anymore, but so I just think the simple thing is there's not enough money, so we need to spend the money wisely. I think spending the money wisely is creating a situation where we have about 16 to 18 full-time clubs. Maybe push that forward a little bit if we can get people in from other areas who want to invest in the game. But really, I don't think we have I don't think we're sustainable beyond that from a full-time environment. And at the moment, if we count the Bulls as a full-time club and sort of basically make Featherstone and Toulouse effectively de facto full-time clubs, even though they're not quite, then we have the 12 Super League clubs. We have Toronto Lee, who are definitely full-time clubs. We've got Featherstone, we've got London, we've got Toulouse, and we've got Bradford. We've got 16 full-time clubs. That's about where we're at. And I don't say, be satisfied with that. Try and get more money into the sport completely, but spend that money then on the clubs that have that potential to be the full-time club, that want to develop that full top-down structure through to bringing kids in on scholarships from the community game. That's great, but I don't think we want an even playing field financially in the Championship, because I don't think the clubs want it.
And if you think about it, that's 500.
The fan base wants it either.
I don't. That's a good point. But if you think about it, that's 500 people who are calling themselves professional rugby league players full time. Roughly, give or take. So you say on average it's about 30. But once you've taken some, are going to have bigger squads in certain Super League, lower down. On average, squad size. That's basically 500. That's a lot. That's a large workforce to sustain. 500 people. So you've got to think of as a whole game, how are we getting that revenue that's going to sustain 500 people's jobs, just the players? Then you say the support staff, the management, the marketing, the ticket sales, the retail, probably triple that.
And that sort of stuff is kind of why I understand the Super League clubs doing what they've done in appointing their own exec, even though it doesn't make sense from the now having to spend that money twice almost. But it makes sense to have a top focus for a period with a long-term strategic plan that will embrace more full-time clubs into that model. But it doesn't make sense to have your priorities completely scattergun and not understanding where they are, because then you don't have a vision, then you don't have a goal, you're just trying to sustain, and we've seen that's not right, that's not worked. So I don't know, I know what I know what Paul's sort of sentiments are, and if we could find a way of giving all the Championship clubs £600,000 to £800,000 a year, great, fantastic. I don't think we're there yet, and I think the only way we're going to get there is through improving the revenue streams from the top.
Yeah, I think that's that's got to be your marquee product. That's your easiest sell, isn't it? Super League is your easiest sell. Yeah, you want someone to come in, right? You get them to put money in at the top.
That right now.
Exactly. Well, that's I could fill hours on that.
Well, get Toronto, get the Toronto situation sorted, and then
exactly.
Then maybe there's another.
But this is part of it. Is why it is a hard sell. Is because there's so many blooming questions, and there's not the leadership that just comes in and just says, "No, piss off, that's not happening," or "We'll look into it." There's no actual, answer. No questions are ever answered.
The begging bowl's out all the time, isn't it? So if you want to throw money at the sport, we'll just believe everything you'll tell us, and it's almost been like that for. And it's not a begging bowl with this is what you get for it. This is how we're going to get out of it. This is how we're never going to be back here again. It's put a plaster on and we hope that the bleeding stops. That's all it ever is, and that's the worst bit because you just think they're just going to end up in exactly the same position. Infection, they just
exactly
cover up the scratches. Yeah, right, fair enough. So I don't think we've given you the answer you wanted, Paul, but we've had a good chat about it, and I'm sure loads of people have totally different views, and let's get those in and we can air them over the next couple of weeks, please, guys out there, because we do fully support the lower levels, as we were just talking about Coventry in depth before. Okay, lower level of Super League now. Tom Andrews got in touch, Hull KR fan, and he had a go at making a bottom four dream team. This has come up over the last couple of weeks, and he put together his bottom four dream team, Tim, that went as such: Quinlan at fullback, Hall and Evalds on the wings, Vai and Sow in the centres, Atkin and Myler in the halves, Mulhern, Parcell and Cuthbertson were the front row, Whitley, Blair and Tara McCarthy were the back row.
Right, the two that jump out at me there, Matty Parcell. He's been there or thereabouts, but not. He's not really ripped up any trees.
I just think he's not played enough games to edge him out there, and no one's played enough games at Widnes. I mean,
no one's been walking for more than 5 in a row, have they? So, and the other one is Tyrone McCarthy. He's been missing tackles left, right, and centre whenever I've seen him play.
Yeah, I think it's that to me is a recency bias thing. He's so active when you see the highlights and stuff, and he's so committed, and he's always at it, that everyone has a soft spot, I think, for Tyrone McCarthy, because he feels like the kind of player that us guys who aren't ever going to crack it want to be like. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah, I get it, because his game is around work ethic and around trying to. But unfortunately, I think I'm partly biased because of having watched him for a season in a KR shirt where he must have missed about 600 tackles. It felt like, and they were all key tackles that gave up something or lost something, and then there was an absolute shocker in the cup final, and that's kind of clouded my judgment of him to some extent.
I think everyone missed a few tackles in the cup final. Right, well, there's some nailed-ons, isn't there? Quinlan absolutely nailed on as the fullback.
100%.
Ryan Hall has made so many metres this year. He's worked so bloody hard, even though he's not necessarily had the try-scoring awards. I think he's nailed on. Richie Myler, right up there in terms of try assists. You might want to say there's question marks over how good a leader he is, how good he is at closing games out, but he's very creative still. He was last year for Catalans in a weak Catalan side. He was this year for Leeds in a weak Leeds side, behind a pretty busted pack as well for most of the time. Rob Mulhern absolutely nailed on, best prop outside the top 8 this year. I think everyone who's seen can agree that. Parcell gets a tick next to his name in my book, because there's just no one else I could think of really that's done enough. Matt Whitley, huge fan of Matt Whitley on the Super League pod. We have been since he first came through. I remember Ludo and his lad Jack did a end of season review 2 years ago and talked a lot about Matt Whitley at that stage, and he's just grown from. He runs great lines. He works really hard in attack and defence. He deserves it. Junior Sow, I think if there's ever any Salford player that gets in any dream team, it almost feels like Sow is the inevitable one. He doesn't stop.
And he's a danger from a defensive point of view. You're looking at him. You don't know what he's going to do. I'm not entirely sure that he's entirely sure what he wants to do.
No,
as he's coming in, he's got that, dare I say, X factor that he's just going to edge him above most other people.
Yeah, Vai definitely deserves to be in the conversation for the impact he's made. He's had a few match-winning sort of turns, getting Hull KR back into contention for the eights and then fading. But we've got to remember Callum Watkins was outstanding for 2 months of the season. And Leeds have absolutely fallen to shit since he's been out of
effectively they've lost 3 players in him. They've lost the captain, they've lost the guy who's going to make those meters through the edge, and they've then lost effectively a third finisher.
And they've also lost a good defensive centre, which they hadn't lost before when he'd been injured, but they have now. So I think it's between those 3, Vai, Sau and Watkins for the centre spots. Evold is a bit of a question mark for me, but I went back to Tom and I said, surely Ryan Shaw. Like, first of all, he's got the best goal kicking percentage of any goal kicker, and he kicks a lot from out wide. He's a bloody brilliant goal kicker, is Ryan Shaw. And whenever I see his highlight reel stuff, he's scoring nice tries. But what Tom said is his defensive work has been so inept at times, from Tom's opinion, that maybe he's been jaded to not want him in the side. What other wingers do you think get in the conversation? Because I think Evols is a better fullback anyway than a winger. To me, it would be between Shaw and Bibby.
I think Bibby is probably your next one down from Shaw. I get Tom's point about the Shaw defensive work, but in a side like this, how much are you expecting of him? I think his overall net contribution's probably been more positive.
Yeah.
Again, there's no one who's jumping out at me and saying, pick me.
I suppose they have that net contribution question mark over Cuthbertson as well. I'd be going Garbutt, but
Garbutt's
only played 8 games.
Cuthbertson's had a fair injury as well.
But every time Garbutt plays, he makes 150 metres and scatters people and looks impressive. So I'd have him in there because of every time I've seen it was amazing, basically. Atkin, what do you think about Atkin being there? Has he been a bit too much of a jack of all trades this year?
I think he has. I think he's suffered, and I've said this a few times, that I think he suffered by not being told. And I think as a young player, as much as anything, and someone coming in to try and establish themselves, he needs to be told, you are playing here, that is your position, learn it, work it, and you're going to have 5 good games, 5 average games, 5 bad games, but we'll assess you after that 15 games. We won't. The problem is, and it's partly been caused by the injuries, but partly I think it's just a consistency point from how Tim Sheen sees him. He just sees him as effectively how he used Ben Hunt internationally, and how Ben Hunt was used internationally, that he can just slot in anywhere, and because he has got that dynamism in his game, he can just run out from anywhere, or he's not going to let you down. So I think he's suffered because of that.
Do you think Danny Maguire's been better than him? I'd have Maguire in the 6 in this dream team.
I think he has, but I think he's been so in and out the side through injuries, and now he's going to be out through suspension.
Yeah, we'll get to that in the preview and prediction section, because that's going to be significant for the Sky TV game on Friday.
We're not going to miss Mossy Masso and his missed tackles from Friday night.
Blair and McCarthy, the other questions.
But again, Blair's another one who's suffered by. He's played in four different positions,
and I think maybe it's a hard decision for Tom putting Blair in there, because Blair's, the Hull KR fans, you'll know this, love him, don't they? And he gives a lot back to them as well, as an overseas player. He stayed with them going down and those sorts of things. That just endears him to the crowd. But I think Stevie Ward should be in there ahead of him personally.
Well, Stevie Ward is the Leeds O'Loughlin, isn't he?
He's got the potential to become that, I think, in time.
Certainly on the injury record, and turning up and then disappearing for 3 games.
Anyone else you want to give a mention to that's not been called out by Tom or what we've talked about so far?
I don't think there's nobody that's screamed to me.
No, I think if I was pulling a bench together, I'd have Jay Chappelow on my bench. I'd maybe be thinking about as well from Salford. I think Mossop, when he has played, has been really good for them, but he just has not played anywhere near anywhere near enough. Mark Flanagan,